Hello and welcome to NPC. That stands for Next Portable Console. It's a show about the games we take with us. And my name, as always, and forever, is Brendan Bigley. And I'm here with John Voorhees.
Yes,
John.
Always and forever, John Voorhees here, signing on to NPC Next Portable Console. Hello.
We're not here with Federico Viticci, who has been beset by plumbers who are doing emergency work in his house.
Perhaps it's Mario. I don't know.
Yes.
It could be. His name could be Mario.
It could be Mario. Shout out to our first responders, Mario and Luigi, for fixing Federico's house. But we have a bunch of stuff to talk about today. I've been testing some stuff. Some big announcements have happened. Where do you want to start, John? Where do you want to start today?
Well, look, I think we had to start with the news as always. And I think that the Lenovo Legion Go 2, which has leaked, is worth talking about because it does look like this is a pretty big update. And, IFA is about to start in Europe. I think this is kind of the story of NPC. We're like 1 or 2 days away from IFA starting. But this episode will come out after all these announcements have already happened. But we do know, I think, a fair amount of details about the Legion Go 2 that are worth sharing. And we can talk next week if there's anything additional or different. But it's an 8.8-inch screen with a 1200p OLED screen and 144 refresh rate, and it supports VRR. That right there is pretty good. That's and Lenovo, if you've heard us talk before about both their tablet, the one that Federico has, and the Legion Go, they do a really great job with their screen. So I would expect that this screen will be very good too. Yeah, if history's any lesson.
Is this the screen that people thought was impossible when it leaked the first time? I think there was something about it being OLED and having VRR.
I think
and
you're
a high
right.
refresh rate that was like, you can't have all three of those things at the same time unless you invent something new.
Yeah, that's a very good memory, Brendan. I think you're right about that. That there was speculation, at least on Reddit, that it's not possible to have those specs. So, as we sit here today with the speculation, we'll see, right? Proof will be in the pudding. But this also has the AMD Ryzen Z2 Extreme. So that's that's kind of the other big piece of this with 32 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD, and improved ergonomics for the controllers. Now they're detachable just like they were with the first version, and it's expected to be revealed on September 5th, which, as I said, as we release this, will have been a few days ago. But I don't know. What do you think about this? I look at this and think this is the Legion Go that I have sitting on my bookshelf, but just better. And I'm really glad to hear about the ergonomics because the original one did have kind of, squared off edges that were kind of uncomfortable. Yeah.
I've taken to myself and to no one else, but now I'm saying it on a podcast, so now this is to everybody else. I've just been calling them, gamer ergonomics, which is just like everything is sharp for some reason. And nothing is comfortable.
Everything needs to look like a spaceship. And why are spaceships all angular now all of a sudden? It's a good question.
Deeply confusing. I really feel very strongly that these companies need to be thinking more about ergonomics, and not even from the perspective of just like everyday comfort, but even from like accessibility perspectives. Like there are fewer people who will be able to use your handheld if it is both gigantic and uncomfortable to hold. You could really only have one of them, I think. So I'm glad that they're focusing on that more. The thing with me about this kind of era of handhelds that we're in is just like the Z2 Extreme is exciting and cool, I think, for people who have not upgraded since whatever their first handheld was. Like if you got a Steam Deck, the Z2 Extreme is significantly more powerful than what was in the Steam Deck.
Yep.
And even for me, like I have the ROG Ally X, like it is a bump technically, but is it that sizable of a bump that I would upgrade myself? Probably not.
No, I don't think I would either.
But you and Federico are big Legion Go fans. You really like that device. You like the size of that screen. You're into the detachable controllers. Like it's not really ever been my thing. I tested one for a little bit and I was not a huge fan of it. Mainly because of the size of it. Like I just think 8 inches like gets to the point where I'm like, I don't think I want to use this anymore, or I definitely like won't bring it in a backpack with me while I'm traveling, for example. And at that point, like kind of what is the use to me outside of a computer that I'm holding. So I think this is probably still not going to be for me, but for people who were fans of the first one, I think they're going to be very, very happy with it. And it'll be nice, again, to have ergonomics that don't need to be fixed via 3D printing, you know?
Yeah, there's so much of that going on. I mean, it could kill a whole industry, I suppose, but I would love to see them do it right from the outset and not have to have things 3D printed.
Put a pin in that, John. We'll talk about that later.
All right, that sounds good. You know, the thing about the Legion Go 2, I'm personally not interested in ordering one. For me, the Legion Go, I still like it a lot. I found that the detachability of the controllers, that novelty wore off pretty quickly for me. I don't detach them very often. I think Federico does because he does all kinds of stuff, like, you know, puts the screen on the gaming pillow and plays it in bed at night lying on his back.
He plays Valorant professionally.
Well, yes, he plays
secretly.
Valorant. Yeah, he does. Yeah. I have no idea. You know, he's got his setups, which are very different than I think yours or mine. Yeah. And that works for him. I feel like this is a bump from the Legion Go, but not such a big bump that I'm willing to spend that kind of money to buy another handheld. Plus, I just feel like we're at the point where, and we've talked about this a bunch before, we're waiting for a bigger generational jump in chips in terms of performance. Yeah. Plus, we're waiting for like Microsoft to get their act together with Windows. I mean, you know, I feel like we're in this transitional period where things are going to change. Maybe Microsoft's part of that story. Maybe they're not. But we're going to get better performance for sure next go around with chips. And we'll be getting some more interesting, larger, kind of more desktop-y PC handhelds in the future.
Yeah. By the time this episode is out, the most recent episode of Wavelengths is out as well. And that episode is me talking to Matt Horton largely about the Valve Fremont device that leaked, which, if you haven't heard of the Fremont, it's this basically rumored, speculated desktop console, or I guess like set-top console, like very classic video game console, I guess, that Valve is making that is very similar to the Steam machines from like 2014, 2015, but obviously this time probably running SteamOS.
Right.
But, you know, it is not a Steam Deck. It is not a handheld. It is just a thing that you plug into your TV or your monitor. And the specs for that are hypothetically leaking. There's like Geekbench benchmarks and stuff that you can go check out, and you can kind of see what that thing is running. But the feeling I had more than anything seeing that is like Valve knows they have the lead here, and they are running with it, and they're on the offensive in a way. Like, not only is SteamOS becoming more and more popular in the handheld space, but they're now like, can we just take a bite out of the Xbox's lunch straight up, and, you know, the PS5's lunch straight up?
Yeah, you know, and potentially it doesn't even have to, right, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a huge bite that they take out, because I feel like a lot of what Steam's been able to do is do these things at a lower cost than what Microsoft and Sony can do. So yeah,
exactly.
I think I'm excited about that device. I think it would be, especially if it integrates, it should integrate well with the Steam Deck itself, you know, having your game saves available and not having to do, you know, all that stuff should synchronize. Just makes that kind of tabletop under the TV device work a lot better than maybe it did when, you know, they originally had their devices out in 2014, 2015.
Yeah. I think specifically if that device is even close to as powerful as like what the PS5 is looking at right now, that's kind of a no-brainer purchase, maybe even instead of another video game console when like the next generation rolls around. Just knowing, first of all, as you were saying, the cloud saves of it all. But second of all, like all of these publishers or all of these companies, you know, PlayStation and Microsoft specifically, are publishing all of their games on PC anyway.
Right.
Kind of no reason to not have them all in one place, you know?
Yeah, what's really interesting to me with Valve is how they've been able to leverage the library, the Steam library, because the Steam library is the sticky part that keeps people coming back, because it's like, wow, I've got all these games already here and I can play them in all these different places, and now I can play them on my TV. Yeah, it's a great, I mean, yes, obviously you can dock your Steam Deck, but I think having a dedicated device that probably has additional cooling and can probably be run a little faster and have a little better performance would be an advantage.
And then also hypothetically, like for me in my setup specifically, it would make game streaming from Steam a lot easier than it is right now. Like I have a PC here at this recording setup, but this is about as far away from my router as I can get in my apartment.
Yeah.
Versus where I would put the Fremont, if that thing came out, would be literally like plugged into my router and then would allow me to do game streaming to a Steam Deck or to another handheld very, very easily using Steam Link, which I think would be really nice. Yeah, there are just a lot of upsides to that kind of device. And knowing the pricing of the Steam Deck, I have to assume it would be like more powerful than you would expect for cheaper than you would expect as well.
Right.
Which would be a nice, that's obviously like the sweet spot for anybody in terms of wanting to buy anything.
Yeah, I think that if they follow the same formula as Valve did with the Steam Deck, then they've got probably another hit on their hands, I would think.
Yeah. It's just so interesting to think about how much the Steam machine tanked initially. And like the real answer was they just had big picture mode, but they didn't have Proton as the compatibility layer between Windows programs and Linux programs.
Right.
Which, that has just gotten so good at this point. Like for me...
For years, right? It's been developed for years. They've got a big head start on that kind of thing.
Yeah. But on the Ally X, that thing for me boots directly into Bazite now. I'm just booting into SteamOS basically. And I have to choose by holding a bunch of buttons down simultaneously if I want to boot into Windows instead, because Windows just doesn't... I really only use it if I'm emulating stuff, and that's kind of it. Like there's really nothing else I need Windows for, which I think is a pretty good sign that they could release the Fremont now, and it would be pretty successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brendon, for our next story, I want to bring listeners on a journey. Yes. I want to peer into the mind of Federico Fetici. Since he's not here, we can make fun of him a little bit. Which is, he added in our show notes a Lenovo concept laptop that has a rotating screen where you can switch it into portrait. I'm not really sure how this works in practice, but there is a picture of what looks like a very standard laptop, maybe like a MacBook Pro or something like that. And it's showing the screen in portrait mode. And Lilliputting's article said that, one of the sells on this is vertical video. Sure.
Right.
I mean, you want to watch your reels in portrait on your laptop, I suppose, on what looks like maybe like a 15 or 16 inch laptop. I don't know why this is in here. I don't know why it's relevant. Yes, I suppose you could play some vertical games on here, but
I was gonna say, I'm sure what he's thinking is Nintendo DS and 3DS emulation.
Yes, I suppose that's true. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. I think that there's a lot of activity there, obviously, and a screen like this is a big screen. I don't know if if you bumped up the resolution to like 4K, you could get some. It'd be big time DS 3DS.
Yeah. Is there any mention here of like what the specs are inside? No, it doesn't
no, I don't think so. It's no, there is not much.
Lenovo Vertiflex.
Yeah,
is the name of it.
Wow. Yeah, so we'll see. It's a concept. It's not one of those things that we're necessarily ever going to see the light of day. Lenovo does that a lot. I mean, they've done all sorts of different things. Oh, you know what I just had is an ad pop up on my screen. How about that? Thank you, Lilliputting. They just took over my entire screen with an ad for whiskey. All right, where should we go next, Brendon? Now that
that's a great question.
I had my screen taken over. I'm off my game now.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in this new Anbernic device. Anbernic revealed something called the RG476H. Which I think in most worlds would be something that's not really worth even commenting on, because if you look at it for 8 seconds, it looks exactly like 100 other Anbernic devices that exist already.
Yes.
I think the thing that's interesting about it specifically is, first of all, they've also moved. This is the first device I've seen of theirs that has moved to this all glass front that everybody seems to be using. Yeah. But also, it seems like they're probably switching over to the T820 chip, which we've seen in a bunch of other devices recently, which I think it screams to me that the T820 is now at this point where it has become readily available enough and cheap enough that it's like kind of becoming the default over things like the H700. You know, like last year, Anbernic had 12 devices and they all had the H700 chip in them.
Right.
I do think that's I think that's a positive piece of Anbernic's strategy in a lot of ways, is like having the same chip in a lot of devices and a lot of different form factors. I do think is helpful, especially for like, you know, third-party developers making custom software and stuff. I think it's nice that they could all be kind of targeting the same spec, you know. So like if you bought an Anbernic device in 2025 to 2026, maybe hypothetically, you know, you kind of know exactly what you're targeting there. I think the thing for me, and I feel this way about the Odin stuff, and we'll talk more about the Odin 3 later as well, but I just don't know how I feel about this all glass front thing that we're seeing on every device.
I was going to ask you. I'm just curious what you think about it, because I know that there's kind of a split in opinions about the all glass front. Personally, I kind of like it. I mean, I think I like. Maybe I can see I guess there's a couple things. One, it looks less like a retro handheld in the sense it doesn't echo the old devices. So that's kind of a bummer. And it also can get fingerprinty. It's a little bit like a mobile phone that way with all the glass. But I do kind of like the sleek look personally. I don't mind the all glass at all. How about you?
That's the thing, is I think it looks good, to be clear. But also, if you're thinking about it from like a function perspective, you know, these devices that, you know, sometimes have OLED displays and stuff like that, like you would hope, you would probably get the black device, right? Because the all glass front would mean that, you know, the OLED screen would blend background. I don't think this has an OLED screen, to be clear, but just talking about glass fronts entirely. So you get the black device, so the OLED panel kind of blends into the background, but then because you got the black device, it's more fingerprinty, which I'm not really a person who minds fingerprints that much, but on devices like that, I have noticed them more than I would, and I have cared about them more than I would, and I do find myself like breaking out a microfiber cloth and then you know, trying to get rid of them more often than I'd like to. And like that's just not a thing I feel like I need from my handheld device, you know?
Yeah. I think the other thing is too, because you know, you take these on the go with you, a lot of these devices, there's more room for it getting scratched up, which is obviously another downside. And that's why, you know, I think the clamshells we've all been so happy with is that we don't have to worry about those as much. You just shut them, throw them in your bag, and, you know, take off. Whereas these, you're like, oh, should I have a case? Should I have a little microfiber sack for it or something? What am I going to do to keep the screen from getting all messed up?
I have a hunch. That this thing is not going to be so expensive, or it'll be surprisingly cheap. Because it's worth mentioning that this is the same, I think, screen. Maybe I'm wrong about screen, but I know it's the same chip at least as the RG Slide. And the RG Slide right now is around $150 to $160 USD. Obviously containing, you know, the sliding mechanism and a bunch of other stuff. I'm sure there's like R&D costs that go into that as well. Did that one have a what was that screen looking like? Yeah, that was not an OLED screen. But either way, it was a 120 hertz screen though. But I'm thinking if you cram that chip into a device that is like a very classic Anbernic aesthetic, which is just, you know, horizontal stack, not inline shoulder buttons, et cetera, I could see that thing targeting $100 realistically. Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic there, but I think for like $100, that device would be a no-brainer for a lot of people. Because it's capable of playing, like, you could play a chunk of the GameCube library and a chunk of the PS2 library, and even getting into that realm for that price is huge. That's a big deal. Oh,
it really is. I mean, I think that's an interesting possibility. I'm not convinced it can go that low. I would think it might be closer to 150 or so, but yeah, I mean, it looks like a good device. I'm not a big fan of the thumbsticks both being on the bottom like that. That's just a personal preference more than anything else, but otherwise it looks like a pretty nice device.
Yeah, I don't think I would buy this thing to play GameCube, to be clear. But it's cool that the option is there. And the more, I'll say this much, the more Anbernic makes T820 devices, the more we get closer to my dream of them just making a PSP. Like, I think it's going to happen. I think they're just going to do it, especially like the RG slide. I feel like most of the feedback was, it doesn't look enough like a PSP Go.
Right.
I think they could get there.
Yeah, because it was very chunky.
It's a very chunky
square,
device.
Very square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Odin 3?
Yeah, we should dive into the Odin 3 because the Odin 3 was the big news this week because it had been teased before when we talked about the Thor. We knew that it was coming, but we knew nothing about it whatsoever. Right. And now we have a lot more information. It's a 6-inch screen, 1080p AMOLED display, 120 hertz refresh rate. And it's which is definitely an upgrade from what we've seen with like the Portal. The chip inside is a Snapdragon 8 Elite, which I think is probably the most interesting choice here.
It's a contentious decision. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, and just to round out the specs, it's 390 grams, but it's still got an 8,000 milliamp hour battery. That 390 is less, I believe, than the Odin 2 that it's replacing by a little bit, by like maybe 30 grams or so.
Yeah. They've also revealed, I think it's going to come in 4 different specs that you can buy when you pre-order it, which is going to be Base, Pro, Max, and Ultra.
Okay.
Which I have a hunch about why they're doing that. But all of them are using the 8 Elite. There's no version of it that is using a different chipset, which I thought was interesting.
I thought maybe the base might actually stick with the
AYN 2 or AYN 3. Yeah, whatever's in those things. I thought so too. Yeah, I was surprised that it was all the 8 Elite. So I think this is speculation based off of honestly what I saw from a recent Retro Game Core video about the Odin 3, which is basically this chipset is not great, but like better than most for PC game emulation specifically. Like if you want to be emulating Windows games, the 8 Elite is pretty solid in that regard. The Ultra model, pretty much all the models are bumping up the internal storage and also the RAM. So the Ultra model has 1 terabyte of onboard storage and 24 gigabytes of RAM. I think that model exists basically explicitly for people who want to be doing high-end PC emulation.
Yeah.
That's my read, at least.
Yeah, that's probably right.
It's cool to provide that for people, but I do think it's worth mentioning, like, the reason we're saying that this chip choice is contentious is mainly because the 8 Elite is, like, not really well optimized for emulators. It's like kind of the biggest problem with it at the moment. It is not capable of running the same drivers, like the turnip drivers and Mali drivers that people use to get higher end emulation out of things like Switch emulation and PS Vita emulation and 3DS emulation on the current lineup of Odin 2 devices. And because of that, if you buy the Odin 3, you're basically kind of in a holding pattern to see if people start developing drivers for the 8 Elite, which is not a great place to be in. I think specifically because there aren't a lot of phones. I think it's worth looking outside of the retro handheld world, but like there aren't a lot of phones using the 8 Elite also, which generally means like there is a smaller and smaller contingent of people who like will be actively developing those drivers. You can still get like official drivers, like Qualcomm has a website where they're updating the drivers themselves and you could download them there. But in terms of these like third-party drivers, like the ones that we're all downloading off of GitHub every week and a half, that's not going to be the case with the 8 Elite. So there's a world in which, and I don't think this is, I'll say this first. There's a world in which you get the Odin 3 and it performs worse with games that you were playing on the Odin 2. And that is obviously a bummer. I think that the difference in performance, realistically for most people, depending on what they're trying to play on their Odin 3, won't be so wide, that gap in playability, that it'll like render things that you were loving on the Odin 2 unplayable unless you are pushing the Odin 2 to its highest limits. If you're like, I bought this thing to be a Switch emulator, first of all, I don't think you should have done that. Second of all, I don't buy the Odin 3. Like, the Odin 3 will not save you here.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely right. And this is one of those devices that feels like necessary to push handhelds forward into the next generation of what can be emulated. But it's very early adopter in that sense. So like if you're, as you said, if you're trying to push the envelope with this thing, you're going to run into frustrations. That's pretty clear. Yeah. I know Russ's video showed that he was having trouble with, I think it was Mario Odyssey that he was trying to emulate, and it just wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, it didn't even boot. Or no, it booted, but it wouldn't render any of the game worlds.
Yeah, it was like flashing lights or something. It was really, there wasn't much to it. But yeah, when I first saw this, I was pretty excited. But by the same token, I think the Odin 2 is still like a device, even a couple of years later, that I would recommend to most people because it is just so good and it's got so much support from the developer community and can play such a wide range of games and has a great screen that I don't think the Odin 3 really is necessary for an awful lot of people in that sense.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, the thing... Way back when you were on the first version of the Wavelengths podcast,
right?
When the Odin 2 first came out, and you and I both talked about it. And the thing we said then is still true now, which is the overhead of what the Odin 2 is capable of is still high enough that people are finding new ways of utilizing that chipset and that power to performance ratio to get more out of that device. And to me, the Odin 3 being released just hypothetically means that you'll be able to find cheaper Odin 2 units probably out on the marketplace from people who are like selling their Odin 2s to get Odin 3s. I would recommend that. And also, and you know, we talked about this last week, but the Thor, for all intents and purposes, is just like a clamshell version of the Odin 2. That to me is like the end game ultimate version of the Odin 2. Like I will pick that up and I will probably just use that device for a long time until there's an Odin 3 mini or something. Like we'll see. Like I'm actually more interested in the rest of the Odin 3 family than I am in the Odin 3. And the little like asterisk, like just to top it all off here, I just don't really like the way the Odin 3 looks that much. I'm glad that they went all in on the ergonomics again. I was nervous about that when they first announced it because it looks just like the Portal on the front, which was concerning. But the back has some pretty substantial grips. I'm sure they're going to sell like TPU grips like they did with the Portal as well, realistically. So that'll be even better. But I was surprised to find this announcement didn't excite me the way I thought it would. Because I think if you had asked any of the three of us, even 2 months ago, are you excited about the Odin 3? We would be like, whatever they announce is a no-brainer purchase day one.
Yeah,
because that's not the case.
Right. No, it's because it's based on our love of the Odin 2, really. And I think that there's like a bigger picture thing we should consider and talk about a little bit here too, which is that goes beyond the hardware itself, which is these devices are starting to push emulation into realms where they're going to have serious legal issues with Nintendo. You know, the Switch, the Wii U, all this stuff. And to me, that's an issue that, regardless of the capabilities of the hardware, it's going to hold back some of these high-end devices. And it's one of those things where I'm thinking about where are handhelds going from here? I mean, there are still, we'll see the lower tiers, less expensive devices, I think, be able to do more and more, play more GameCube, play more PS3, that kind of thing. Yeah. But where do we go with kind of the mid-tier and high-tier devices? Where do they go next? Is it all about the hardware, or are they really going to try to sell them as things that can emulate these more recent consoles that could get them in trouble with, Sony and Nintendo, Microsoft, whomever? Yeah.
I forget what device we were talking about last week, but we were talking about a device last week that had Mario Odyssey like on the buy page.
It was the giant one, I think. The giant.
Yeah, it was that really big one. Yeah.
The absolute whatever.
Yeah. Oh, it was the absolute. You're right.
Yeah, absolute something one. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously not a good move. Never throw Mario on your purchasing page. If people are not buying that game legally and playing it that way. I think you're right. I mean, we're seeing Switch emulation teams get rocked, right? Like Nintendo's going after Switch emulation teams. That won't stop people from making Switch emulators, obviously, and they get passed around online anyway. Like, that stuff's always going to exist. Like, it's one of those you can't put the genie back in the bottle situations. Like, I just think that stuff is always going to exist. But I do think you're right. Like, for me, in a world where there are, a million devices like the Odin 2 and the Odin 3 that exist already, the thing that's getting me the most excited are the companies that are experimenting more with form factor.
Right.
And I feel like that is, if you are a company looking to make money and continue to exist and not get pummeled into the dirt and become one with the earth because Nintendo's legal team came after you, then that is probably the better avenue to be exploring than, can we sell this as a Nintendo Switch replacement?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Brendon, I know that you got a delivery last week.
I did.
And I want to hear all about it because you got the Killswitch, right, for the Nintendo Switch 2.
I did. I got the Joylock version 2.0 of the Dbrand Killswitch for the Switch 2. So
Joylock TM.
Yes. Okay, quick recap of the Killswitch.
Yeah.
The Killswitch is a case and like grip system that Dbrand put together. I think they started it with the Steam Deck, but it might have been with the Nintendo Switch 1. I mean, given the name, it would make more sense with a Nintendo Switch 1. But either way, I remember the Steam Deck one being the one that like really took off. That was the one that people got really excited about. And they have released the Killswitch for a bunch of devices since then. I was never super interested in a thing like that, especially on the Steam Deck, which I think has amazing ergonomics. I didn't need it. But when I picked up the ROG Ally X, pretty immediately I was like, this has gamer ergonomics, as I was talking about before.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that it's better than the ROG Ally non-X, but even then, it was not very comfortable to hold. So I picked up the Killswitch for the Ally X and love it. I think it is an amazing case. It is completely worth the money, in my opinion, personally. Has a travel cover. I feel very comfortable throwing it in my bag. I took it to CES when we went to CES together. Mm-hmm. Love the Killswitch for that. So when Dbrand was kind of leaking the Nintendo Switch 2 before it was announced and saying, hey, we're going to have a Killswitch for this thing as soon as it launches, to me, it was a no-brainer purchase. I was like, cool. Yeah. I'm down for this. I'm going to pick this up. I ordered one, and in between when I ordered one and now, there was a lot of drama. Basically, not even drama. I mean, just like rightful, I think, upset consumers on the internet, because the Killswitch had a tendency of killing people's Switches. I didn't see any like firsthand accounts of people being like, my Switch broke because I was using the Killswitch. But it is worth mentioning, when you put the whole thing on, which is basically a grip system, there's a grip that goes over each Joy-Con and then a thing that goes over the back. It's like a back plate that attaches to it, that makes the whole thing flush. And if you were playing the Killswitch in handheld mode, it had a tendency to wedge plastic between the little tiny gap that exists between the Joy-Con and the actual like unit itself, like the screen part, and would wedge the magnet apart and send your Switch tumbling to the ground. That obviously is not good. If your case makes it more likely that your Switch breaks, then it is doing the opposite of what your case is supposed to do.
Right.
So Dbrand had their like little antenna gate moment. They kind of Steve Jobs'd it, and they were like, you're holding it wrong, and then eventually relented. They were like, okay, we'll fix it. And they came out with this thing called Joylock, which is, for most consumers, you will not notice a difference between Joylock and not Joylock. I don't know why they named it or even called it out. I just think it's very funny. I guess they patented it. I guess they're like proud of the patent. Maybe that's the answer. But either way, they said, if you had ordered a Killswitch, we will send out this free replacement to everybody. There's also some other stuff included in there, which I could touch on. But we'll send that replacement to everybody. And if you are in a weird phase where you pre-ordered the thing and you haven't gotten one yet, we are holding the pre-orders back until we can fix this and get it in production.
And that was you, right?
That was me. Yeah. So I had ordered it before all of that stuff got fixed, and now I have this fixed version. I'll grab it for the video viewers. So I think the first thing worth noting about the kill switch for the Switch 2 is that I'm not using the backplate.
Okay.
At all.
How does the backplate attach?
I don't know where it is.
How does it attach to the? Is it like clamps or a?
Okay, so here's the thing about the backplate. The backplate, and this is going to be hard to illustrate, I think.
I can kind of see it, yeah.
But the backplate has these like little blue tabs on it, which you're supposed to take off and are adhesive. So what Dbrand wants you to do
is stick it on there and leave it on there.
Stick it on there, and then you leave it on there forever. And when you do, you stick it into place, and it's a perfect fit. And honestly, I will say this: if you have the whole thing put together, it does feel really good. Again, this like back part is flush with the grips. It's really nice. But if you have the back plate on, it doesn't fit in the dock anymore. And Dbrand has included a dock adapter that you then need to install. I don't know where the box for the Killswitch went, so I won't show off the dock adapter. But it's this big monstrosity that you have to plug into the front of the dock.
Okay.
That allows you to plug your Switch into the front of the dock, and then it kind of leans back and rests against the front wall of the dock.
Okay, so it's outside the slot of the dock. It's in front of the dock, leaning against it. I see.
It's basically like a USB-C extender.
That's that's quite a hack.
Yeah, it's weird, doesn't make a lot of sense, and for someone like me, and this is, I understand that this is like a niche thing, but this is my lived experience, which is as a person who is making a lot of content about video games, I have a Switch 2 dock right here on my desk that I'm constantly capturing footage from, and I have another dock in my living room where I could plug my Switch in for when I just want to play the Nintendo Switch and not make it my day job. And that would require me getting another dock adapter.
Yep.
But the other dock I have in the living room is not the official Switch 2 dock, so that dock adapter wouldn't even work in that respect. So I'm kind of SOL in that regard.
So it doesn't work. It doesn't work with that the Antank dock then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's built very specifically for the official dock.
Got it.
So with all that in mind, you could just take this off.
Yep.
And then you just have the grips. And then it docks perfectly fine.
Okay.
And it doesn't feel any less comfortable to hold, in my opinion. And I've been enjoying it a lot. I will say it also came with skins. I decided to go with, I could turn this like blurry thing off. I ended up going with the skins that like make it red and blue, like the original Switch Joy-Cons, which honestly I think it looks very good. And it also came with these thumbstick caps, which make the thumbsticks a lot bigger and a lot grippier. Right out of the gate, when I put this whole thing together, I was like, this doesn't feel very good. Like the thumbstick caps in particular. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. John, I played like probably 20 or 30 hours of handheld mode since installing this. I've totally turned around on the thumbstick caps. I really like them. They're really good.
Yeah, I've seen them online. They are pretty big, and they have a lot of texture around the edges, right?
Yeah, they are chunky.
Yeah.
But all of that said, the Killswitch like grips themselves are amazing. I mean, it is so wild. I'll take a Joy-Con off so we can like look at it. The shape of them is like so extreme.
Yeah, there's a lot to get hold of there on the bottom.
There's a lot to get. Like the amount of purchase your hand has on the back here is really wild, and then you still have a finger free for the triggers here. It's really exceptionally well done. Like I've been really impressed by it. The only thing I haven't tried on it, because I don't have any games downloaded anymore that utilize it, is mouse mode. Like I'm curious what mouse mode feels like with this. Yeah. And if Nintendo releases more mouse mode games, or if like third-party developers release more mouse mode games.
I don't think you have to worry. I don't think mouse mode is going to take off personally.
Yeah, what a sad state of affairs.
I guess Metroid is going to take advantage of it, so maybe we'll want to use it.
Actually, now that I'm holding it right now, it's pretty nice.
Okay.
That's interesting. Anyway, the Killswitch is great. I'm really happy with it. It feels kind of exactly as I was hoping it would feel, and it has made handheld mode kind of the default for me, more so than I was expecting.
Did you get the cover?
I did get the travel cover.
And that works even with the back off?
Yes.
Okay.
It does work with the back plate off. But okay, wait. I'll throw it on right now. The nice thing about the travel cover for the Killswitch is that it is not utilizing the same mechanism that they've used for other Killswitch cases, which is like basically you have to like clamp this piece of plastic on, which is like honestly kind of scary every time I do it because I feel like I'm going to break something.
Yeah.
This has like a nice kind of bungee cord mechanism that just kind of attaches like that, and then there's the whole package. The problem with this is that it leaves the back exposed. So like if I were to throw this in a bag, like the back might get scratched. I don't really care about that much.
I don't really either.
It doesn't really matter. But because I have this, there's no point in not throwing it on.
If you're traveling,
If I'm traveling, right? Yeah. Like I'm going to be going away a lot this month because I have a lot of weddings to go to, and like I'll probably take this with me and just put this in there. Like I'll throw the back plate on, and that'll be the package. Which honestly I think is very nice. It's it's a really solid package overall, and also the travel cover has slots for games in it as well. So if you have physical games, you can just throw them in there, which is also very nice.
Physical / non-physical games. If you have pieces of plastic that Nintendo sold you in the store.
Game key cards. Yeah. I have 2 games that are not game key cards.
Do you?
And this one of them's in here, and one of them's in the Switch.
Okay.
But while I think the Killswitch is great, and I would recommend it to most people at this point.
Yeah.
It is worth acknowledging that this whole package is $80.
Yeah.
And it's also worth acknowledging that $80 package is including a bunch of things that I will never use and don't want to use.
That to me is one of the things besides all the drama and problems that held me back from getting it, because I knew I was going to get a lot of plastic doodads that I wasn't probably going to need or use in the long term. I did order one though just earlier this week, so I do have one coming. You? Yeah, I did. So I think I'll probably use it kind of exactly the same way you are, based on what you just said.
Yeah. It's a great thing, but it makes me wonder, like, I would like to test other grips now. Like, I'm curious to try out, like, JSaw has a thing. Yep. They actually have 2 things. They have 2 different cases. One of them's called the mod case. The other one is called, I think, the split case Pro or something for the Switch 2. And then Skull & Co. has the Savage Raven, which is an unbelievable name.
That's a very Skull & Co. name.
Yeah, and then there's also the Genki one. Like Genki has their own kind of grip thing. And I'd be curious to try some of that other stuff, because a lot of them are a lot cheaper than this. Like this is the most expensive one by far, but is also the one that's providing the most like clear ergonomics.
Yes.
The other ones are definitely adding places for your hand to wrap around, but not so much that it's like.
I think Genki has like 3 different options. Like it comes with 3 different, I think magnetically attachable pieces that are various degrees of bulkiness to the back. That too is what Mechanism is doing. Although I haven't heard anything recently about Mechanism's plans. They announced them on their website day one, but they haven't actually released anything yet.
I think my larger concern more than anything, so like, okay, perfect world, not even perfect world, but if everything is as it is now and nothing changes ever again about the Switch 2, this is never coming off the Switch 2 for me. Like this is going to stay on the Switch 2 forever, unless I try out other things. But even then, like realistically, I think the Killswitch is probably the best one.
Yeah.
The thing that I am considering, thinking far out into the future, is what happens when Hori releases their own Joy-Cons, or MobaPad or Cracked comes out with a new Nitro Deck case. When all of these companies start releasing Nintendo Switch 2 compatible devices, like I know MobaPad already has their like weird Switch 2 adapters.
I wanted to mention that because I don't think we've talked about it on the show. And as much as I love my MobaPad, I'm not getting the thing that turns my Joy-Con into Switch 1 Joy-Con, because it's an adapter that adds the rail to your to your Switch 2s that you can attach.
It's like a magnet. It's a rail that you plug the MobaPad into, and then it's a magnetic side on the other end that plugs into the Switch 2.
Right.
Yeah. Which is wild. Amazing that they came up with that and released it and manufactured it that quickly. Like I'm actually very impressed at that by itself, but it looks wild. It looks bad, which is I think
looks like a real hack. I'm not interested in it, but it does give me hope, given that what they've engineered there, that maybe they will come up with their own Joy-Con, because we still have yet to see a third-party Joy-Con solution at this point.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see who comes out with what and when that starts happening. Like, what happens to this $80 investment I made in handheld mode? That's definitely a big question for me, because I think I will be more interested in using replacement Joy-Cons, because like even on the Switch 1, I was using the Hori Split Pad Compact more than I was using the official Joy-Con on that thing.
Did that one have all the features that Joy-Con have? Because an awful lot of those third-party things didn't have, maybe they didn't have Rumble, or maybe they didn't have Amiibo support, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they didn't have most stuff. Yeah. They were basically just for playing in handheld mode.
Got it.
But yeah, they didn't have Amiibo support. They didn't have gyro support. You couldn't use them individually also, like if you wanted to break them off and use them.
Oh, yeah, because they were being charged by the device itself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of them were like that.
None of that really mattered to me because I got them specifically for just a more ergonomic handheld mode experience. And if I really wanted to use the Joy-Cons the way they were intended, I could just use the Joy-Cons because I still had them. Like I didn't get rid of them. But it was really nice to have the split pad compact. So I'll probably pick something like that up eventually with if and when that starts launching. But I do think the if is a bigger question for me. But I think MobaPad launching those adapters does give me hope, as you were saying.
Yeah. And look, I mean, the MobaPad was an expensive thing, too, that came out very late in the life cycle of the Switch 1. So, I mean, we have to be patient, I think, with these things because it may be a while before we see any third-party solutions. And I do expect that when we see them, some of the early ones might be kind of expensive. Now, I think Hori does a pretty good job of keeping their Joy-Con affordable. But MobaPad, I would expect, would be at least like $130, $150. I think that theirs were around $100 when they came out. And part of that was that they were perpetually on sale after they released because the Switch 2 had already been announced or was anticipated.
Exactly.
So I think they had a hard time selling those.
That was the problem with the Switch accessory market for like the last 2.5 years of the Switch. Because the Switch 2 had been rumored to be coming out like at any moment for so long that even I remember when the cracked Nitro deck came out, I was like, why would I buy this when the Switch 2 is going to come out soon? Which obviously it didn't, but like, that's the company that I'm most curious about if they go back and try that again, because the Nitro deck really only worked because it had the Joy-Con rails, like you would like slide it in.
Yep.
And I wonder now in this magnetic world, like would they need to have like a kind of butterfly system that like clamps on the side? Like I have no idea how they would make that device.
Yeah, it would have to be something like that. What they had certainly wouldn't work. So
yeah, but I would love to try a cracked Nitro deck for the Switch 2. I would be very interested in that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's. I'm excited. I have to look and see where my order is. I don't know. I have a feeling that they're still sort of backlogged, even though because they had so many people who were in your situation where they had a pre-order and had to wait out the fix. But I'm glad to not have to deal with that whole thing.
Can I give you a tiny news update that's not super related to the show, but is a little bit related to the show? We're recording this at like the moment that Silksong comes out, Hollow Knight Silksong.
Yep.
Both Steam and Nintendo.com are down.
Wow.
Like error 503 first byte timeout level down, not like
amazing.
Not like just the page isn't working, but like it seems like they're getting slammed because they didn't let people pre-order that game.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask whether there were pre-orders because I didn't even bother to look because I'm in the midst of at Mac Stories. We're in the midst of doing our annual OS reviews, and I've been incredibly busy and haven't had a lot of gaming time in the last week or so. And this is probably the worst possible timing for the release of Silksong, but I will download it, and when I do get a little bit of a break in the evenings, I plan to start playing it right away. So
I'm excited for you.
I guess I will have to wait a little bit today though if the sites are down for a little bit. They'll get that sorted out pretty quickly though.
I hope so, because I have big plans for the next 4 or 5 days of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Now there's a lot of people in your shoes. Oh man! All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We will have Federico back when the plumber gets out from under his kitchen sink. He was there making sure that everything was, I guess, going fine with the sink. And we're here doing a podcast. But he'll be back. You can find Brendon over at wavelengths.online, where you can find all of his various projects. And you can find me and Federico at macstories.net, and all three of us on social media. Just search for us by name. I'll talk to you later, Brendon.
Bye, everybody.